Hello everyone, and thanks for joining today's live webinar on accelerating time to value. My name is Mark Fleming. I'm on the Icertis team and I'm your host for today's webinar. On behalf of the team, thank you all for your time today. We really appreciate it and hope you learned something new. Before we get started, let's review a few housekeeping notes. If you have questions along the way, please use the chat window in the right-hand corner of the screen, and we have reserved some time at the end to address your questions with the speakers. We will also be conducting a multiple choice poll during the webinar. We do encourage you to participate in this so we can share and discuss the results with the group. So let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. First is Peter Smith. Peter's a Chief Research Officer at Spend Matters UK. Peter has been around procurement for 30 years as a manager, Chief Procurement Officer and a consultant. He has a Master of Arts in Mathematics from the University of Cambridge, is a Fellow and was 2003 President of the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. I'd also like to introduce you to Thomas Teitzer, Account Technology Strategist at Microsoft. Thomas is responsible for the technology roadmap for Microsoft's global customers, and he has long-term expertise in the automotive industry. The focus of his work in recent years has been on the secure use of cloud technologies in the industrial environment. Of course, contracts very often contain commercially sensitive data, so it's critical that our customers know their contracts are safe and secure in the cloud. And Thomas is going to provide some insight on how Microsoft's Azure infrastructure delivers this. And finally, I'd like to introduce Martin Moore, the General Manager and Vice President of Sales for EMEA at Icertis. Martin began his career as a strategic purchaser and has spent the last 20 years building a wealth of experience in procurement, software consulting and sales management. Now I'm going to hand it over to Peter, who will get us kicked off.
Thank you very much, Mark. Hello everybody. I'm really here to give a bit of an overview and kick things off in terms of that overview of contract management and contract lifecycle management. I've had three phases really in my career. I had 20 odd years as a procurement practitioner, as a procurement manager and CPO. I then did a few years in consulting and finally ended up doing this rather strange role now where I research, I'm an analyst, I write about procurement. And I like to think of it as, in a sense, people pay me to think about procurement, but not in an academic, theoretical manner, hopefully in a manner that's actually useful to people working in the field. But my first real procurement job, age 25, was buying raw materials for Mars Confectionery, the chocolate company. And when you're supplying a factory that runs literally 24/7, 300 days of the year, making millions of chocolate products, you learn very quickly that the responsibility of procurement doesn't end when you place the contract. If my provider of milk powder or flour didn't turn up at the right time, didn't deliver the right quantity, the right quality, God forbid, had something in their product that actually led to hygiene issues, I would be blamed for that. So I learned early on that really the responsibility of what I call procurement runs through that whole contract life cycle. It doesn't finish when we've done the deal. And I'll come back to that in a minute. So why do we manage contracts? Why do we need to manage contracts? Well, the basic starts with that ensuring that suppliers do what we want them to. They deliver against their commitments. But that's not the full picture, as we all know. And the core principles for me around contract management are risk and opportunity. And one way I look at that is, if we had a contract where there was no risk and no opportunity to gain additional value from that contract, then we wouldn't bother managing it. We wouldn't need to manage it. And that's true no matter how big the contract is. Now, luckily for providers of contract management software, there are very, very few contracts that actually don't contain any risk or opportunity. So let's look at risk briefly, first of all. Firstly, as I said, the Mars example, just simply ensuring delivery of contracted goods. There's risks around that, operational risks. But as soon as we get into more complex contracts, we see all the other hidden traps and risks that are inherent in most contracts. Do we really understand the termination clauses? We've probably all had experience, and I certainly have, of that horrible moment when you realise that you wanted to terminate a contract and you've just missed some deadline buried away in the small print that now says you've got to pay for this software, whatever it is, for another 12 months. Very annoying. Price adjustments. What's in the contract around the supplier's right to perhaps increase prices because of inflation? Do we really understand that? What are the penalties? What are the incentives? All of these areas contain potential risks for the organisation, commercial risks, operational risks, whatever. And increasingly, we see contracts and suppliers and supply chains as a source of reputational and regulatory risk. So there's an expectation now that within our contracts we're addressing issues such as modern slavery, bribery, and in Europe we've got the GDPR coming along, the data protection regulations, and we will be expected to cover off those things where appropriate with suppliers and know which contracts should include them, know where they are in contracts and all that sort of thing. And as well as that risk at individual contract level, it's also useful to look at our risk profile across the whole contract picture at times. So for instance, we might want to look at what our contract exposure is in certain countries, perhaps because of geopolitical events, or even, as we've seen in the last couple of weeks, very sadly, because of natural disasters. So how many suppliers do we have who are based in the Caribbean and Florida, for instance? So that's the risk side of things. On the more positive side of things, good contract management gives us a chance to exploit some opportunities to get more value out of our contracts and suppliers. So for instance, we might want to harmonise best practice terms and conditions. So we might want to look at, are we applying the payment terms we want to use across the whole contract portfolio? We want to make sure we're getting rebates and bonuses back from suppliers, that we're getting price breaks where we should. We want to have flexible contracts for the future and contracts with the right incentives in. I very often see contracts that have benchmarking provisions, either to cover new goods or services we might buy from the supplier, or even goods and services that we're buying from the beginning of the contract. In the UK, we talk about John Lewis clauses, never knowingly undersold. So the supplier has to guarantee that we're getting as good pricing as any other customer. How many firms actually use those benchmarking clauses? How many firms actually go back and talk to the supplier, challenge the supplier about those clauses? In my experience, not many is the answer. So a good contract can't ensure great supplier performance, innovation and so on, but it is an important start. Now this is one of the favourite slides I've ever done in a presentation, even though it does sometimes annoy procurement people. So apologies to procurement people, because what it sort of says is there's a strong argument that contract management is more important than procurement. And my logic there is that if you have a good piece of procurement, good procurement work, you choose a good supplier, you negotiate a great contract, and then you manage it well, the top right box, you have successful outcomes. Equally, bad contract plus bad contract management means failure. It's the other two boxes that are sort of interesting. Because if you have a good piece of procurement, but follow that up with lousy contract management, my experience is the end result is generally failure. Bad contract management can ruin even a good contract. Now the other side of that is sometimes, even if the initial procurement wasn't great, maybe you didn't choose the perfect supplier, but with really good contract management, you can sometimes recover that. I put a question mark rather than a definite yes or no, because it does depend on the contract and the situation. But again, I've seen examples where maybe the initial work wasn't great, but a really skilled contract manager knows what they're doing, and a willing supplier can recover the situation. So that's my argument, that this isn't symmetrical, and contract management really is essential to the success of the contracts we're putting in place. And I've been arguing for 20 years that the procurement profession needs to take contract management more seriously. And when I was SIPS president all those years ago, I was pushing SIPS to get more involved in contract management. And I did, I had counter arguments from senior people in SIPS saying, no, that's just too big, it's too difficult, our job sort of finishes when we place the contract. And this is my argument against that, because believe me, if a contract fails because of poor contract management, it will be procurement that's blamed. Everyone in the business will tell you that it was because it was a bad contract to begin with. And I have definitely seen that situation personally. So in my last 5 minutes or so, let's talk a little bit about investing in contract management, contract lifecycle management, systems, platforms, whatever we call them. And I can certainly remember in one of my procurement director CPO roles, going into the job, week one, asking my senior team, can I have a look at the contract database? And being given blank stares in response to that. So then I said, well, at least, point me towards the cupboard or the filing cabinet that contains the key contracts, even if it's physical, I'll have a look at them. No, nothing. And in the end it was, well, where are the key contracts? And the answer was, well, they're spread all around the department, 100 procurement people, in the drawers, in the filing cabinets, except for the ones that the budget holders hold, and except for the ones that we don't seem to be able to locate at all. And I have had the interesting experience of having to phone a supplier and say, please can you send me a copy of our contract with you? And if you think this is all ancient history, I was talking to a friend of mine who's currently a CPO in a pretty large organization, and he told me the same story. He's been there 2 years, and he said the first 6 months he was constantly contacting suppliers, getting his people to contact suppliers with that embarrassing question, can you send us a copy of our contract? So once you get beyond a few contracts, you need automation, you need systemization. And what you need to do is think about the different stages in the contract life cycle and what sort of support you need. And the answer may well be all of these. There's the contract authoring, development, approval stage, interfacing with the supplier probably quite a lot at this stage and agreeing final terms and conditions, getting the internal sign-offs and so on. You then have the ongoing need for that storage, that reference, being able to check on some of the things we talked about earlier, and getting proactive notifications. Good systems now will do that. They'll tell you which contracts are coming up for expiry, or notify you about key clauses that might be being activated. And then there's the whole element of contract performance management. How are suppliers actually doing? How are they delivering against the contract, incentives, penalties, all that sort of thing. So thinking about investing, and this was my list that I guess if I was running a procurement process for a system, these might define my evaluation criteria. Some of them quite obvious, some maybe slightly less so. Functionality, perhaps one of the obvious ones. What does it actually do? How flexible is it? Can it meet your particular needs? Can you tweak it in certain ways? Can you then integrate with other systems? That's increasingly important. Does it integrate with sourcing, ERP, purchase to pay, and so on? Absolutely critical, usability. And I think in contract management systems, this is even more important than it is in something like sourcing, because the user population for a sourcing system is probably mainly procurement people, whereas a good contract lifecycle management platform will be used by, in a big organization, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people, not just procurement people, end users, budget holders, technical specialists. So that user friendliness is absolutely vital. How easy is it to implement? What is the time to value? And that's the overall topic of this session, and my friends will say more about that later. But it often surprises me how people don't consider this in business cases, because the return for any investment looks very different if you can get up and running and get benefits in a couple of months compared to taking a year or more. What's the future innovation likely to be, the development path, and linked to that, what's the supply look like? Are they stable? Are they committed? Are they going to develop the system and take you forward? And finally, what's the cost? I think these are all important. I might put functionality, usability, and maybe cost at the top of the list, but I'd be looking at all of those things if I was buying a system. And we're at an interesting point now, because of course a few months ago IBM and Taurus, fairly big player in this area, announced that really they're withdrawing from several parts of the procurement tech market. So interesting times. And we see an ongoing debate about best of breed versus suite. I'll say more about that in a second. But the important point I wanted to make is, whatever you read from the analysts, people like Spend Matters and others, you must take your own situation into account, because it's very different if you're starting from a clean sheet of paper compared to if you're starting from a complex current landscape of technology. And really understand, as I say, what are you looking for from your platform. So very quickly, best of breed versus suites. The specialist providers, the best of breed if you like, tend by definition to keep at the cutting edge within their own area of expertise, and indeed in some areas in our procurement supply chain tech market, you know, the very best, most advanced technology is only available from best of breed providers. And I think positively, those providers have in the last couple of years really started getting their heads around compatibility and integration issues, because they know if people are buying their product, they are going to want to link it up with others. But we do need to consider master data issues. That can be an issue if you have many different systems. You know, the single master record of supplier information is important, and that integration thing comes into play again. And ensure costs are taken into account. Look at the total cost of ownership. That can work in either direction, actually. I mean, managing multiple systems can be more expensive. On the other hand, putting all your eggs in one supplier basket, going the suite route, can leave you open, frankly, to exploitation by that supplier. So there's some procurement principles there as well. And remember, whichever approach you follow, think about usability. Because if you're not just your procurement people, but all the people who are likely to use the system, if they find it difficult and horrible and clunky, it won't be used. And whatever mandate you think you have for getting it implemented, in my experience, that will fall over if it's a horrible, difficult system. So, in summary, this is about a paper I wrote a while ago. Good contract lifecycle management, moving away from reactive management into proactive, getting value out of your contracts and mitigating risk. And on that note, I'll be back when we come to questions, but I will hand over to Thomas. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no questions, then thank you, and I want to continue. Thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit about the Microsoft approach, empowering digital transformation, together with Icertis. I work a lot with customers which are in a digital journey at the moment. Technology is changing everything there, and we see a lot of digital disruption in these companies. We see companies responding by creating a digital strategy across 4 key areas: engaging their customers, transforming their products, optimizing the operation, and empower the employees. Everyone is aware of how important this is. If you look at a company like Uber as an example, they created a digital model for the taxi industry that had allowed them to surpass every other taxi company by double or more, recently valued at $60 billion. They created a significant shift in an industry that has been largely untouched for decades. Uber is a very young company, so it's coming in a area which was not changed for years and changed everything. And we see this everywhere. A lot of my customers currently working on transforming their products. If you think about connected cars, connected homes, connected everything, it changes a lot how you sell products, how you develop products, and how you work with these products after they get in the hands of the customer. Many of the companies I'm working with are transforming from products to services. So you don't probably buy a car, you share a car, you buy a car, And this requires a lot of changes, how you interact with your customer, how you making contracts with your customer, how you control things, how you do purchasing, how you do sales, how do you sell a service. It's totally different how compared to selling a product. And it continues to the operation. We're talking about connected industry, Industry 4.0, especially here in Germany, and it's a big theme all over the place. How do I integrate my suppliers in my production chain? How do I optimize my logistics? How do you create the possibility to have numbers of products which are very low and can be customized to the requirements of a customer? So a customer wants to have a dedicated product, how to get all the information at the right time, at the right place, so you can really optimize the product production and bring the product out to the customers. And this also requires that your employees can do more with the data. With IoT devices, we are able to collect many data. How do we bring this data to the employees so the employees can make the right decisions at the right time? To optimize things, to work easier together, to collaborate on new products and ideas. And we see this not just inside the company, that employees want to collaborate. We see it also with your customers. So many customers are very active now. So they are on Facebook, on Twitter, whatever, bringing inputs to your company, bringing inputs to your products. And you have to look at this, you have to work on this information, respond in a timely fashion, and engage your customer in your digital journey. And all these things bring a lot of new requirements and things for a company to change. Going digital requires a fast and agile approach. If you see Uber, we can't wait for 10 years before we bring out this new product. It has to be fast, it has to be rock solid, it has to work. And we as Microsoft want to provide a platform for such solutions in a digital world, on premises or in the cloud. It's your choice, and we want to give you this choice based on your needs, on your requirements. With the cloud, we have the opportunity or the possibility to make it easier for you to concentrate on the solution and not to manage servers and networks and so on. So you can start right with the right solution on top of our platform. Sometimes you won't even notice that Microsoft is behind the solutions. So we see more and more solution from partners like Icertis coming up, which provide turnkey value to customers. So you can immediately use it out of the cloud and connect it to your network, connect it to your employees to be more productive and to use the values of the solution as fast as possible. If you go to the cloud, it helps a lot to scale based on your needs. If you think about connecting millions of new devices in maybe a year or in a month, whatever, it requires a lot of scaling. You have to act on these new events coming in. You have to scale your infrastructure and so on. We can provide this out of the cloud and helping you to concentrate on your work, on your solution, on your product, and not on servers. Our approach is to providing a hybrid platform. This means the same platform you find in the cloud can you use also on premise. We used a lot of our experience in the enterprise environment we created over the years to bring this to the cloud, enhance this with cloud technology, and making it possible now to move between your on-premise environment and the cloud environment. We want to provide a productive environment. This means you will get a lot of services which you can immediately use. We have a lot of solutions based on these services which help you to do certain things without the need to set up everything by your own. We want to provide an intelligent platform with big data coming from IoT devices, with computing out of the cloud. We are able to better understand the data, to give you more insights in the data, and giving you intelligent information about your data, which should help you to do intelligent decisions in your process. And of course, we want to provide a trusted platform. If you give the data to Microsoft in the cloud, your data should be safe, and you should be sure what happens with your data. And this is one of the key themes for us, providing a trusted cloud, making sure it's secure, and your data are protected. With Azure, we try to provide exactly this platform. We invest in Azure since years, and we're one of the largest cloud providers worldwide. It's not just Azure. We also have, for instance, Office 365, our productivity platform, which uses similar or the same resources. And we have a lot of other big cloud environments for our customers today. So we have a lot of experience in this area. And I want to give you an idea how big our cloud is today. It's a global approach. We are all over the world in many, many countries today. And it starts not just with the data centers, it starts also with a network. And Microsoft today is one of the largest network providers worldwide. We have a lot of internal networks between our data centers, overseas cables, glass cables, and so on, to make the data transfer between our data centers as fast as possible, but also make it easy for you to access data in our data centers. And of course, we have the data centers all over the world. Today, we are in 42 regions worldwide. Of course, the majority are in the US, in Europe, and in Asia. But we recently announced data centers in South Africa. So we are the first cloud providers bringing cloud data centers to Africa as well. We have multiple data centers in Australia. We have data centers in China, also in Germany. And China and Germany are two examples of data centers where we address also local regulations. There are certain regulations for the data center in China. And in Germany, we have a data center which is operated by T-Systems, where Microsoft doesn't have access to the data center to address some concerns in Germany and the government in Germany. This is an example. We listen to the customer, we hear things, and then we try to implement solutions to address their concerns. As I said, security is important. We do a lot in the physical security, but also in the processes. It starts in the data center itself. Who can access the data center? We reduce the number of people who can access this. We do checks of the people accessing the data centers. We protect the data centers by itself. These are large, very large data centers. We do a lot to make sure nobody can enter these buildings. We do in the buildings, making sure that only allowed persons can enter this. And we also protect the server environments by adding firewalls, special checks on the network traffic, and so on. Of course, everything is encrypted and so on. So it's not just physical and the security in the data center. That's also a lot of processes around. Who can access data, how the data are secured, how do we check this, and so on. And there's a lot of internal processes going on to ensure your data are trusted, your data are protected, and nobody other than you can access this data. And we don't just do this with processes, we also do a lot of certifications for these processes. So these are some examples of certifications we have for our data centers in the cloud. It's not just industry certifications. We also do a lot of regional certifications to also address local laws and requirements. For instance, just recently with the German cloud, we also got the certificate from Germany, which is important. It's called the Germany Grundschutz Workbook. So it's very important for German companies to have this, and we can provide this. And we are also one of the first cloud provider who addresses these things. So security is important, and we constantly improve also our processes. And all these certificates are regularly checked. It's not just a one-shot thing. So we do it once. So all these certificates are regularly renewed, and you can always check what's the current status. Do you need a special certificate? Let us know, and we try to provide these things. One thing coming up, and I'm absolutely sure you heard about it already, is GDPR. Here in Europe, GDPR will change a lot, especially if you are doing contracts with customers, with companies and so on. It requires a better data governance. So you should be able to transparently show data you have for a customer. You need to provide some reporting. It needs to improve the data policies. So it should be easy to control the data a company owns about me. And there's a stricter control about this, where the data are stored, and to give private users access to their data. And all these rules also apply to the cloud environment and to Microsoft, and we are heavily working to enable GDPR also in our cloud environment. And we will be ready next year. If when GDPR goes live, we will be able to providing you all these GDPR compliances for our cloud environment. But it doesn't solve all your problems. Of course, you also have to handle your processes with GDPR, to make your process GDPR ready. And Azure, our cloud environments, brings a lot of tools which could help you to be more compliant with GDPR, or to helping you on your journey to get your compliance. So for instance, we're giving you tools to discover data, so you making it easier to find data. If you have a lot of data, where are the data of a specific customer? How can I search for this and identify personal data? Then of course we have tools and services to manage data. It starts with controlling access. We have a lot of access control in the cloud environment, so you can make sure that only the person you want to access data can access this data, even inside your company. You can also classify data. We have a lot of services to protect, to encrypt data, to do the right key management, and so on, to making sure the data are secured, even if data are lost in case of a breach. And we can protect the data in the cloud, of course, with a lot of processes we have and certificates to prove this. And we're helping you to detect threats. We have the intelligent graph as an example. So we measure network traffic, and if we see unusual behaviors in network traffic, we can inform you, giving information to do deeper checks and to making sure that you don't get breached. And we're helping to report things. If you want to or need to report your data, we can give you tools and reports to provide the necessary information. So GDPR is a very important part in Microsoft, and all processes will be ready by end of this year for this, our Microsoft processes, and we're helping you also to be GDPR ready as part of our security. So in summary, Microsoft Azure as the hybrid cloud, as the cloud to host your solution, is a secure environment which helps you to drive your digital transformation. It's a platform with unique intelligence, with a lot of information inside the company, inside the cloud, which can help you to build intelligent solutions on top of it. And we have a broad partnership with many partners like Icertis and others, building solutions on top of Azure. Okay, and with that, I think we have some questions.
Thomas, Mark here. So thanks very much for that presentation, Thomas. Actually, the next step is we'd like to turn your attention to our to a live audience poll, which will appear on the screen very shortly. In the meantime, if there are any questions, please do remember we've reserved some time at the end of the webinar for Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat window. I'll take a note of them, and we'll be responding to them in the order in which they're presented. So you should now see our quick poll. So the topic is when selecting a cloud provider, what is the most important requirement to you? So just kind of, we're curious as to, for the people who've made some time to join us, what is your, most important requirement for selecting a cloud provider? So we'll just take a moment or two as people vote, and then we'll show you the results online. So around about 60% of the audience have voted now. So if you do want to, if you'd like your vote to count, now is the time to press the button and let us know what's most important to you about selecting a cloud provider. And in the words of the auctioneers, I think we're sort of going. And about to be gone on this. Okay, so the vast majority of the audience have voted. Thank you very much for taking part. And I think we're now about to show you the results. And well, we can see that platform functionality seems to be the standout here. So let me hand over to Thomas from Microsoft, who's just been presenting about Microsoft's Azure infrastructure. And Thomas, do you have any? Does this resonate with you? Do you have any reflections you'd like to offer at this point?
Yeah, it's not surprising. It's what we also see in discussions with our customers. Data security is one important point. If you want to go to the cloud, your data need to be secure. So we have a lot of discussions with customers regarding security, legal contracts, and so on. But we solved also a lot of discussions in the meantime, and we have many customers already using the cloud in Germany, in Europe, and worldwide. And platform functionality is also a common theme we see. So sometimes you are constrained by your internal IT. Your IT has provide the current environment inside a company, and it's hard for them sometimes to provide new functionality which are important maybe for you. If you're talking about blockchain, if you're talking about machine learning, IoT use cases, it's sometimes hard to get these functionality in an agile and fast way inside the IT department. That's why customers coming to us also and asking for functionality in the cloud. Can we provide this out of the cloud as fast as possible? And we see also a trend in the cloud that we move up from just providing a virtual machine or some network connectivity or storage up to higher level services like a scalable web infrastructure, BI environment, and so on. So platform functionality is also definitely a trend we see with our customers.
Super, thanks, Thomas. So, in the interest of time, let's move on, and I'd like to change gears now, as they say, and turn over to Martin Moore to share with us a little bit about the Icertis approach, and I think give us some insight about our experience with a number of our customers. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much, Mark. And I love the result of the poll. It's a perfect handover platform functionality, because this is what comes in play when you have a solution running on a highly performing Azure cloud. So just to set expectations for the remaining time and the remaining 15 minutes, we learned from Peter from Spend Matters that contracts are very important to run your business. We also learned from Thomas from Microsoft that now we have these powerful and secure cloud applications. Everything is actually ready to what Peter has addressed. And now in my presentation, I would like to give you 3 key takeaways. The first one is why contracts are foundational for enterprises, so from a solution provider perspective, and how Icertis on Azure Cloud approaches enterprise contract management. And the third thing, I think this is most important to show the proof, is why and how Icertis clients have started their journey on a digital transformation with implementing a contract lifecycle solution. So we will talk briefly about Daimler, BASF, and Sanofi. So on that slide now, I want to start with the point why contracts are foundational for the enterprise. Every dollar in your organization which goes out or in should be subject to a contract, and most likely is subject to a contract. So in the typical organization, employees, their efficiency is often limited by the existing contract management process, especially when it comes to getting insights. So traditional tools slow them down. They are not really addressing their business outcomes because they are very much siloed, meaning actually every function needs to get certain information out of a contract and therefore needs access to a contract. For instance, procurement professionals, they need to negotiate better prices, even with high volume, with a high volume of global contracts. They need to have access to key metrics like expiring dates, aggregated spend. And these data comes from contract management, but also from other systems. Finance and compliance teams need the tools to reduce their labor costs while still ensuring compliance and minimizing risks. So this is also only possible when they have full visibility of the financial impact of a contract. Legal teams are most likely seen as a bottleneck in the organization. They need to decrease their exposure to risks while making sure that contracts are compliant. And they want to do that by ensuring that people use the latest approved language in all contract documents. And then finally, sales professionals, they need to accelerate their sales process without sacrificing quality. Time kills deals, meaning actually I need to get my contract out based on a quote and an accepted quote as quick as possible and agree on the terms. So again, seamless connection with a contract team to reduce their overhead costs. And most important, what we see more and more as an ask is being able to do that in a self-service mode. So as you can see, there are many areas of organizations that stand to benefit from in particular from digital transformation. And as they are considering a solution, should be integrated into the CLM product should be integrated seamless on Azure Cloud to other applications. So looking at it from a more IT landscape perspective, contract management is foundational to commerce. But in most enterprise organizations, they focus very much on talking about a procurement suite, talking about actually a CM system, ERP system, and HRM systems. And in every solution, there's some piece of contract data. But all of them actually need to have a view across different systems. So we turn that around. The Icertis approach is that we see contract management as the foundation of these systems, which feeds into these systems. But you have all the entitlements, all the obligations in one system. And this is quite key. So we at Icertis, we believe that one contract management solution should support all of these individual areas, unifying them under a common platform. And I will tell you in a moment why this is so important and why this needs to happen on a highly performing and scalable cloud solution. Oh, I think this was moving one too fast. Sorry about that. Some of my co-presenters want to rush me through the slides. I promise I will hurry up. So very much key is that if you take a holistic view on all the contracts, you have buy-side contracts, you have sell-side contracts, corporate contracts. Many customers or enterprise organizations right now have a very siloed view. I explained that already when we looked at it from the functional perspective as well as from the IT landscape perspective. But an enterprise-wide contract lifecycle management solution run on a highly performing cloud should be unified for all kind of contracts, any language, for any areas of the business, and this should be done with a system easy to use. And now I give you a few examples. So we are facing clients who actually sign up with their customers on the sell side a contract, which carries certain SLAs. And in order to actually get paid by their customers, they need to make sure that they deliver those obligations and actually also agree with their subcontractors on with their SLAs on certain KPIs. So in order to get that holistic view, you need to have an obligation management in place, which is driven based on SLAs and KPIs, loaded actuals, to find out actually how is your supplier performing. It requires that you have all the relevant data in a single system. And if you think further, this will be the start for enabling micropayment based on fulfilled obligations, which can work in a blockchain environment where you have securely shared cost ledgers. But the basis is actually that you have the full data on a single point of truth, feed it from different applications running your business. And this is actually, of course, a journey where many customers are not there yet, but the point is that they need some guidance on their journey. And this brings us to the, interesting, somebody's clicking for me. This brings me actually to the maturity model we developed with Gartner to help clients on that journey, and also for us when we start the conversation with a client to find out where they are right now and how we should actually address their current business needs the most properly. So when you start from the bottom, many clients have the same challenge having a repository in place. So they have different ERP systems in different regions for different legal entities and run pretty much in a highly segregated environment. It starts with implementing cloud technology where you can easily integrate into different systems and create one entry to a repository. The next step is actually that you want to ensure that every new created contract should actually be fully automated and be created based on approved templates from your legal department, based on clear workflows across the whole organization, where only exceptions get needs approvals from legal, finance, or compliance. So a second step is really to get contract not only of legacy contracts, which by the way can easily migrate it out of any system, either systems which are getting sunset or systems which are not fulfilling all the requirements. Nowadays, you can easily load contracts and do a legacy load into a repository like Icertis does. And then the third step is once you have your existing contracts in place, you have the right clause library in place and you create contracts based on these, you can ensure that the governance and the compliance gets applied, that your organization has self-servicing functionality based on cloud, based on mobile devices, that everybody, no matter if he's in procurement or in sales, can create his own contracts. And this brings us, of course, also to the possibility to mitigate risks, because if contracts are based on a clear, structured, and compliant way, then usually it addresses already the risks which you will now see more and more getting addressed with GDPR, where you have to have full control, either full control of your data. And it also enables you to manage your obligations, because the contract data, it's the first time actually in history where you have the chance to easily get all your contract data digitalized and managed on a cloud-based solution. And of course, the top of the pyramid is that you start optimizing your contracts. It's not just about being regulatory compliant, which is a must-have. It's also about finding out, based on AI technologies, that is this the smartest contract we can actually right now generate with our suppliers or with our customers? Isn't there another contract in our big enterprise which had a better clause in, which applies more to that situation? Why is not the computer tipping on my shoulder and telling me that while I'm creating a contract actually, that this can be optimized just by using a different clause? So proactive suggestions is what a customer can reach implementing Icertis and applying AI technology like either Watson Container or what machine learning technology you're using. So this is a typical journey clients are taking, and on that journey you need some guideline which helps you actually to navigate straight to the top of the pyramid without losing sight and speed. So these are the guidelines. These are the guidelines which second. Stay still, please. Jackie, can you move back one slide? So the basic guidelines around your journey is that contract systems should connect you and eliminate any siloed data, and this across the whole industry. Sorry, 2 slides back, Jackie. The second point besides connecting is it must be streamlined. So it must be intuitive. The reason is that the contract process should be automated and be possible anywhere, anytime, on any device. So nowadays, not only the millennials, everybody, any generation is used now to technology which helps you in your day-to-day business. This drives adoption, and our experience developing Icertis contract management on the cloud is the experience a user makes Sunday shopping on Amazon or actually connecting with friends on Facebook is almost the same experience they want to have when they go Monday to the office, have a dashboard with their existing contracts, with the stages these contracts are in, and can easily navigate through the contracts and trigger the relevant processes which are needed. This drives adoption. If you're lost in your current system, and this is actually why some systems are more and more get sunset, they are cumbersome to use, and customers look out for other solutions in the market. So if this is the case, I'm sure you're right now on your journey to find easy to adopt systems. And only if this is in place, then actually you enforce automatically that specific agreements will be used, because they are easy to find and the system helps you to assemble your contracts. And then only if you have all the contracts done on the single system, you can start analyzing and attaining proactively the visibility on efficiency and risk. So these are the guidelines whenever you go out in the market, when you look for a solution, when you do your proof of concepts, make sure that you have a very powerful cloud provider. We selected Azure for that, and we are natively built on Azure, and do not actually move outside of these guidelines. So the next slide is about use case. So Daimler, for instance, they selected clearly Icertis on Azure Cloud. Please move to the Daimler slide, Jackie. Because they were on exactly this digital transformation journey. So they're working with 400,000 suppliers across the world. And they need to ensure agility and flexibility across their global supply chain. In fact, when we talked to the Daimler management, they just came back from a tour on the West Coast, visiting Google and Apple to find out how they are developing their products. And they came to the conclusion, if they're not changing the way how they collaborate on cloud solutions, or should collaborate in cloud solutions, they can get out of business. They need to have much faster innovation cycles than just 8 years to come up with a new car model. So the way they approach it is that first let's get full visibility of all the procurement information around the world. So to capitalize on opportunities and consolidate purchasings, unifying procurement process, different business and geographies, and then actually getting all the information, critical information for supplier management, innovative information, and have alerts for contracts which are expiring, if exchange rates are changing, if anything happens which either downgrades a supplier rating or which shows them they need to work more intensively with the supplier. This must be visible. And so why did Daimler choose to work with us? So mainly because the architecture of our Icertis combined with the capabilities provided by Microsoft Azure exceeded Daimler standards of extensibility and reliability. So as a result, Daimler can easily incorporate Icertis into the entire procurement ecosystem. And as a next step now, they also use new features like item-to-item level quote comparison to automate the sourcing process and have therefore state-of-the-art analytics and making purchasing decisions. I want to close the presentation with a couple more client examples. Jackie, please, next slide. So we see more and more enterprise organizations putting a lot more focus on contract management, same as Peter pointed out in his first presentation. And there are, from our point of view, two main aspects driving that behavior. One is that, as Peter pointed out, the importance of having visibility of contract data. And actually, considering the truth that it's the foundation of any business. You know, whatever is defined in a contract, it's the one and only truth and needs to be controlled and leveraged across the organization. So this is one aspect. The other aspect is technology. So as Thomas pointed out, there's technology disrupting ways of business. It almost puts companies on risk if you're not applying technology quickly. And none of these clients you see on the right list is patient to wait until large monolith ERP vendors are ready to deliver what they need. So they reach out on the market and they look into scalable, highly performing solutions. So main aspects to summarize what you see on that slide is they look for robust, easy to use, and having great configuration possibility solutions which they can quickly deploy and generate results. If this is not proven within a very short proof of concept, then they say, well, it's not the right one. So here are a couple of examples where this could have been achieved. We can connect you to these clients, and of course, feel free to reach out to Icertis for any kind of questions. With that said, I get back to you, Mark.
Martin, thank you very much indeed for that. So I see we're running fairly short of time, so perhaps we have time for, there's a few questions in, perhaps we have time for one of these. And I guess, Peter, this would be a question for you, Peter. So the question is, we don't have any real specialist procurement technology in place. What should we look at first? The person asking is, should it be spend analytics or sourcing or P2P, contract management? What are your thoughts?
Well, that's a great question. I could probably talk for another hour about that. I think it depends what you want. I mean, I think you need to get a grip of your current situation, and knowing what contracts you have in place, going back to my example, me as a new CPO, is such a foundational thing. I do think that's pretty high on the priority list. I think spend analytics, similarly, you know, knowing where the money is going. but actually the contract management does give you the opportunity both to start getting that grip and also perhaps to identify some quick wins, which is quite important. So I would probably do that before I invested a lot in e-sourcing or even purchase to pay. Actually, I mean, purchase to pay tends to take you quite a while before it's delivering real benefits. Not that it's not worth doing, but again, it does depend where you're starting from, so individual situations. So that was a very brief answer anyway.
Peter, thanks for that, and thanks for keeping it brief. So I would draw people's attention. I don't think we have time, I'm sorry, for any further Q&A. Peter of Spend Matters has kindly offered to publish the Q&A in Spend Matters during the course of next week. We will be, I'll say in a minute, the actions from us. I would encourage you to have a look at icertis.com/toolkit. You'll find a lot of white papers about contract management, of course, about how to implement it quickly, about how you might want to try and sell it within your own organization. So it's a good source of some very current information. So this does really bring us to the end of our webinar today, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. We will send out a follow-up email to all attendees with some of the materials we referenced, along with a presentation which will be available for download, and the full recording of this webinar. So with that said, we will say again, thank you very much. Please do enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for joining, and this is the end of the webinar. Goodbye.